Hi, I'm Joseph R. Lewis and I write adventures. And in today's video, I want to talk a little bit about structuring a plot or building a story, the event, the sequence of events that your players are going to walk into at the beginning of your adventure. We touched on this a little bit in earlier videos, but I want to do a little bit more detail, dive a little bit deeper on this subject right now, just so you have a little bit more to work with. So we're going to talk about how to structure or build a good plot for an adventure that you're writing. So the first thing we need to caveat for this is that, again, writing an adventure is not like writing a novel. The players are never going to see your text. They don't get to go back and reread something. They don't get to touch on it. So the players are learning all of the information about your story secondhand through whatever the GM tells them, whenever the GM gets around to telling them. So, in order to support the players and make sure they're having a good time, we need to make sure that the information that we're giving them is as clear as possible and as simple as possible while still supporting a good adventure. Uh, Part of this is that, again, players are human beings and their real lives are 98% not playing your adventure. They're just going to pop into it for a couple hours every week or 2 weeks or a month. They're not going to remember a lot of the nuance and detail, and they're never going to be shown that nuance and detail. That's for the GM. They're going to see that. So we need to make things memorable so that the players can always sit down and quickly say, I remember what we're doing and why we're doing it and why we care, and they can jump in and start playing and having a good time. The first thing we need to make sure everything is clear and simple for our players is an antagonist. I don't want to say villain, but it's usually a villain. But the first thing we need is an antagonist that the players can identify and remember very clearly. This is very simple. Your antagonist needs a name, a distinctive appearance, maybe a tool or weapon that they carry, maybe a pet or a sidekick that travels around with them, maybe a distinctive way of speaking and acting that's sort of dramatic and noticeable or scary and spooky. But whatever it is, and it could be an individual or the antagonist could be a faction. We've talked about factions before. But either way, when the players sit down at the table, and it's been a week, 3 weeks, whatever it is, the players should be able to say, oh, yes, we are going after Dracula. That is the bad guy. I remember him. I know why. I can picture him in my head. And let's go. Let's start playing. The thing we're trying to avoid is having the players sit down and say, what were we doing? And why do we care? And where did this come from? You don't want them to be apathetic. You want them to sit down and be engaged and care and be able to move forward quickly. And part of this also involves, when do we introduce the antagonist to the players? Um, this is something that I've grappled with in some of my writing and adventures because it's tricky to do. The best advice I can give you is have the antagonist show up as early as possible, which includes the very first session or the very first scene that happens in your adventure. This can be done in something like, I want to reference Curse of Strahd, I guess. Strahd, is a Dracula type, very powerful villain. He can do whatever he wants. He can appear wherever he wants. The players at the beginning of the adventure maybe don't know who he is, but have no ability to fight him. Or even if they could, he can still flee. He can disappear in a cloud of bats. So it's easy for him to say, hello, I am the bad guy. I'm going to do something bad because I'm bad. Oh, I'm doing a terrible accent. I apologize. But, he can hurt a victim. He can steal something. He can mess things up. And then he can laugh maniacally and fly away. That's a very mustache twirling sort of villain. But it allows the players to see them and immediately say, oh, that's a bad guy and I know and care. And now I want to go hunt that bad guy and do heroic things. There are lots of ways to do this. Maybe doing it at the end of the first session, give the players time and space to explore a little bit, to ask some questions before the villain sort of shows up, and you can have that great moment. But again, it should be early. The thing we're trying to avoid is having the antagonist be way off screen at the end of the adventure, and the players are spending all of their time, session after session, exploring a mystery, trying to figure out, is something going on? What's going on? Why is it going on? Before they finally get to who is doing it. And that could, again, be spread out across many sessions, which could be spread across many days or weeks or months. And it's hard to keep player engagement if they don't know and they can't care about what is the problem we're trying to solve. So we want to front load this in some way by introducing the villain in a very personal way as early as possible, that they show up in some way. They show up in the player's dreams. There's a flashback where the villain has already harmed the players, prior to the adventure even starting. There are lots of ways to do this. You can be very creative. Again, it's not like a real scene because the villain shouldn't really be in danger of this interaction, nor should the players. It's just an introduction. So try to think of ways to introduce a clearly defined antagonist for the players to care about for the rest of your adventure. The next thing that your antagonist needs and your adventure needs is a clearly defined goal. What is the antagonist doing? This should be something, again, that can be easily stated and easily remembered by the players so they can care about it and jump into the play as soon as you sit down for the night. And it should be something that is relatable to them as human beings. For example, the villain wants wealth, wants power, wants revenge, wants love, wants to survive, some sort of immortality thing. It should be something that is clearly stated and that the players can understand on sort of a human level. In the same way, let's keep doing Dracula. Dracula, one of his drivers is he misses his lost lover. He's looking for her reincarnated form. So he's trying to find her. So he's looking for his lost love. And that's very relatable and understandable. It's easy to communicate, and we can say, oh, I know why he's doing what he's doing. Um, so that's good for the players to remember and care about what's going on in your adventure. The next thing that your villain or your antagonist needs is some sort of activity that they're engaged in through the body of your adventure, the thing that is ongoing, that is leading them towards achieving their goal. And again, this should be something that is logical, that the players can understand easily, which is like Dracula's building a tower, and at the top of the tower, he will do the ritual that summons his wife back. Or Dracula is destroying all the churches in the land, and when they're all destroyed, then he can summon a demon. Or he's trying to gather the 10 MacGuffins, and when he has all 10 of them, then he can perform the ritual that summons the demon and his wife, and whatever it may be. But it should be something that the players can quickly identify. This is what the villain is doing, and have some way of interacting with. Let's try to stop him at the next time, or let's try to undo the thing that he did. Whatever it may be. But they should be able to logically understand how those activities that the villain is engaging in will lead the villain to achieving their goal. So again, when they sit down at the table, the players can say, all right, we're trying to stop Dracula from building the tower to summon his wife. Easy. They should be able to say it in a simple sentence so that they can care and remember and engage with your adventure. The last element that I think a well-written adventure should give to the GM as a tool is some kind of timeline of events. This doesn't need to be incredibly specific or detailed, but it should be a sequence of events. This is what the villain is doing and how events will unfold, maybe with a couple caveats that if this goes wrong, then they'll do this instead. But it should be a series of actions that the villain is first going to go to this town and try to get this MacGuffin. And then they're going to go to this town and get that MacGuffin and so forth. And maybe just say like every couple of days or every few hours, whatever makes sense for your adventure structure. Again, it doesn't need to be hyper detailed, but it should give the GM guidance. Oh my gosh, my poor kitty. Your timeline should give your GM guidance on what to expect to happen next. Because again, the GM is sitting down and maybe they haven't been thinking about this adventure for the week. And they should be able to quickly say, oh, right, the villain just did X. Now they're about to do Y. I'm ready to go and do scene Y or, adventure location Y. And it makes it easier for everyone to sit down and quickly have fun because you, the writer, have done the work for them and spelled out, even at a high level, what to expect to happen next. And that makes it easier and more fun for everyone at the table. So we've covered a clearly identified antagonist who shows up early. That antagonist needs a clearly defined human relatable goal, something that they want that the players can understand. That antagonist needs to be engaged in a logical activity towards engaging or towards achieving their goal. And you should be giving the GM some kind of timeline or sequence of events so they know how this fiendish plot is going to unfold in logical succession. And I think those are all the elements you need. Obviously, it's much easier for me to say than it is for us to write, but I think those are the elements that you need to have a successful working plot in the adventure that you're writing. And I think that's all my advice for right now. So good luck out there.